My name is Sophia, and I'm 22 years old. Today I want to share with you the most devastating and ultimately liberating moment of my life. It happened on what should have been one of my proudest days, my college graduation. You know that. Feeling when someone you love cuts you so deep that you actually feel it in your chest? Like your heart is literally breaking apart? That's exactly what happened to me on May 15th, 2 years ago. The words my mother spoke that day changed everything I thought I knew about family, love, and my own worth. I was standing in my cap and gown, about to walk across that stage to receive my bachelor's degree in engineering. 4 years of sleepless nights, countless study sessions, and working 2 part-time jobs to help pay for school. I was the first person in my family to graduate college. The first one to even make it past high school, actually. My hands were shaking as I adjusted my graduation cap. Not from nerves about walking across the stage, but from excitement. Pure, overwhelming excitement. I kept looking back at the crowd, searching for my family's faces. I'd reserved 8 seats for them. My mom, my dad, my 3 younger siblings, my grandmother, and my Aunt Sarah, who'd always believed in me. But as I scanned the audience, my heart started sinking. Only 3 seats were filled. My grandmother, my Aunt Sarah, and someone I didn't recognize sitting next to them. Where was everyone else? Where was my mom? The woman who raised me, who I thought would be bursting with pride today. I pulled out my phone and saw a text from my mom that made my blood run cold. Sophia, we decided not to come. Your father thinks this whole college thing was a waste of time and money. Honestly, so do I. You could have been working and contributing to the family instead of chasing some fancy degree. Don't expect us to celebrate what we see as 4 years of selfishness. I stared at that message for what felt like an eternity. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. My own mother, the woman who gave birth to me, thought my greatest achievement was selfish. That my education, my dreams, my future was a waste. But here's the thing about rock bottom. It gives you a solid foundation to build from. And that text message, as cruel as it was, became the catalyst for the most important transformation of my life. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Before I tell you about this life-changing decision, hit like and subscribe to hear more real stories about family loyalty and betrayal that might just change how you see your own relationships. I wiped my tears and put my phone away. Professor Martinez, my academic advisor, appeared beside me in line. She'd been more of a mother figure to me these past 4 years than my actual mother. She took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. "What's happening, Sophia?" she asked quietly. I showed her the text. Her expression shifted from concern to anger to something that looked like fierce determination. She put her hand on my shoulder and said something that still gives me chills today. "Sophia, some people will never understand the courage it takes to break generational patterns. Your family might not see it, but you're not just graduating today. You're changing the trajectory of your entire bloodline. And that, my dear, is revolutionary." Those words hit me like lightning. Revolutionary. That's exactly what this was. I wasn't just getting a degree. I was proving that someone from my background, from my family, from my circumstances, could achieve something extraordinary. The processional music started playing. It was time. As I walked toward the stage, something shifted inside me. The pain was still there, sharp and real, but underneath it something else was growing. A fierce, unshakable sense of my own worth. I thought about my grandmother in the audience. At 83 years old, she'd taken 2 buses to get here. I thought about my Aunt Sarah, who'd slipped me $20 for textbooks when I couldn't afford them. I thought about every professor who'd invested in me, every classmate who'd studied with me, every employer who'd worked around my class schedule. These people saw something in me that my own parents couldn't see, or maybe they saw it and were threatened by it. Either way, I was about to prove them all right or wrong. As I approached the stage, I made a decision that would change everything. I decided that day would be about more than just receiving a diploma. It would be about discovering who I really was when I stopped seeking approval from people who were determined not to give it. To understand what happened next, you need to know where I came from. My family wasn't just unsupportive of education, they were actively hostile toward it. My father, Robert, dropped out of high school at 16 to work construction. He's a good man in many ways, hardworking and loyal to his friends. But he's also bitter about opportunities he never pursued. In his mind, anyone who went to college was putting on airs, thinking they were better than everyone else. My mother, Linda, got pregnant with me when she was 17. She never finished high school either. She worked as a cashier at the local grocery store for as long as I could remember. She always talked about how practical people didn't need fancy degrees. Real people, she'd say, learned by doing. Then there were my siblings. Marcus, who's 2 years younger than me, followed in my father's footsteps. He started working construction right after high school. He made decent money and never let me forget it. While you're wasting time in classrooms, I'm actually earning a living, he'd say whenever I came home from studying. My sister Jasmine was 19 and already had a baby. She dropped out her junior year and moved in with her boyfriend. She always seemed resentful when I talked about my classes or my internships. Not everyone can afford to play student forever, Sophia, she'd snap. My youngest brother Tyler was only 15, but he was already talking about following Marcus into construction. The idea that he might want something different, that he might benefit from staying in school, wasn't even discussed in our house. My grandmother Rose was different. She'd grown up in a time when girls like her didn't get chances at education. She cleaned houses for wealthy families her entire life. But she was sharp as a tack and had a hunger for learning that never died. She'd always tell me, "Baby, use that brain of yours. Don't end up like the rest of us, wondering what if." My Aunt Sarah was my mom's younger sister. She'd gotten her GED later in life and worked as a medical assistant. She understood what I was trying to do. She was the one who drove me to campus for orientation when my parents refused. She was the one who celebrated with me when I made the dean's list. Growing up, I felt like I was living in two different worlds. At home, curiosity was discouraged. Questions were seen as challenges to authority. Books were a waste of time unless they were helping you fix something practical. Education beyond high school was viewed as arrogance. But at school, I flourished. Teachers noticed that I grasped concepts quickly. I loved solving problems, understanding how things worked, building and creating. When my high school guidance counselor, Mrs. Chen, first mentioned college, it felt like she was speaking a foreign language. "Sophia, with your grades and your aptitude for mathematics and science, you could pursue engineering. You could design bridges, work on space programs, create technology that changes lives," she told me junior year. I went home that night so excited I could barely contain myself. I told my parents about Mrs. Chen's suggestion, about scholarships, about possibilities I'd never imagined. My father's response was swift and brutal. "College is for rich kids, Sophia. We don't have money for that nonsense. Besides, what's wrong with honest work? You think you're too good for the life that raised you?" My mother nodded along. "Your father's right. You're getting ideas above your station. Focus on real life, not fantasies." But something had awakened in me that day, in Mrs. Chen's office. For the first time, I could see a different path. A path where I could use my mind, where I could contribute something meaningful to the world. I started researching scholarships in secret. I filled out applications on library computers, I wrote essays about my background, about being first generation, about wanting to break cycles. And slowly, opportunity started knocking back. When I got my acceptance letter with a full academic scholarship, I thought surely my parents would be proud. I was wrong. They saw it as betrayal, as me thinking I was better than them. The next 4 years were a constant battle. Every semester, they'd ask when I was going to stop this nonsense and get a real job. Every academic achievement was met with skepticism or outright dismissal. Have you ever felt like you were constantly swimming against the current of your own family's expectations? That's what those 4 years felt like. But I kept swimming because something inside me knew this was the only way forward. By senior year, I'd made peace with their disapproval. Or so I thought. Nothing could have prepared me for graduation day. The months leading up to graduation were filled with more than just academic pressures. There were secrets brewing in my family that I knew nothing about. My brother Marcus had been struggling with his construction job. The company was laying people off, and his supervisor had been making his life miserable. But instead of admitting this at home, he doubled down on his criticism of my education. Every family dinner became a battlefield where he'd attack my choices to deflect from his own problems. Sophia thinks she's going to be some hotshot engineer, he'd say, his voice dripping with resentment. Wait until she gets out there and realizes nobody wants to hire some girl from our neighborhood, no matter what her diploma says. What I didn't know was that Marcus had actually looked up starting salaries for engineers. He'd seen that I'd likely earn more in my first year than he made after 3 years of construction work. That knowledge was eating him alive. Meanwhile, Jasmine was dealing with her own crisis. Her boyfriend had left her with their 1-year-old daughter. She was back home, struggling to make ends meet with her part-time retail job. Watching me about to graduate with opportunities ahead of me while she felt trapped was triggering every insecurity she'd buried. My parents were facing their own financial pressures. Dad's back was giving him trouble from years of physical labor. Mom's hours at the grocery store had been cut. They were worried about supporting Jasmine and the baby, about Marcus potentially losing his job, about their own future. In their minds, I represented resources that could have helped the family instead of being wasted on education. Every semester's worth of scholarships felt like money that could have gone toward rent, groceries, or daycare for Jasmine's daughter. But the most painful subplot was what was happening with Tyler, my youngest brother. He was actually incredibly bright, maybe even brighter than me. His teachers were starting to ask the same questions about his future that Mrs. Chen had asked about mine. Tyler came to me one evening in March, about 2 months before graduation. We were alone in the kitchen, and he looked nervous. "Sophia, can I ask you something?" he said quietly. "Of course. What's up?" Do you think I could do what you did? Go to college, I mean?" My heart soared and broke at the same time. "Tyler, you're incredibly smart. You could absolutely go to college if that's what you want." His face lit up for a moment, then darkened. "But what about Mom and Dad? They're already mad at you for going. What would they do if I wanted to go, too?" I realized in that moment that my graduation wasn't just about me anymore. It was about proving to Tyler that someone from our family could succeed in higher education. It was about showing him that there were alternatives to the path that seemed predetermined for all of us. "Tyler, you can't live your life trying not to upset other people, even if those people are family. You have to make choices based on what you know is right for you." He nodded, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. The weight of family expectations versus personal dreams. I knew that feeling intimately. What I didn't realize was that this conversation had been overheard by Marcus, who immediately told my parents. They were furious that I was filling Tyler's head with the same nonsense that had supposedly ruined me. That's when my mother made the decision that she and my father wouldn't attend graduation. It wasn't just about disapproving of my choices anymore. It was about making sure Tyler understood that choosing education over family loyalty would result in rejection and isolation. The week before graduation, the tension in our house was suffocating. My parents barely spoke to me. Marcus would make snide comments whenever I was around. Jasmine avoided eye contact entirely. Only Tyler seemed conflicted. I'd catch him looking at me with something that might have been admiration mixed with fear. He was watching to see what would happen to someone who chose their own path over family approval. The night before graduation, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that little girl who used to take apart broken electronics just to see how they worked. About the teenager who stayed up late reading about engineering marvels while her family watched TV. About the young woman who'd chosen to believe in her own potential even when no one else would. I had no idea that in less than 24 hours, everything I thought I knew about family, success, and my own worth would be forever changed. If you've ever felt torn between family expectations and your own dreams, let me know in the comments. Your story matters, and you're not alone in this struggle. After reading my mother's devastating text message, I made it through the ceremony in a haze. I walked across the stage, shook the dean's hand, received my diploma, and smiled for the photographer. But inside, I was collapsing. When it was over, I found my grandmother and Aunt Sarah in the crowd. The third person with them turned out to be Mrs. Chen, my high school guidance counselor. She'd driven 3 hours to see me graduate. "I wouldn't have missed this for the world," she said, hugging me tight. "You did it, Sophia. You actually did it." My grandmother was crying. At 83, she'd lived to see someone in our family achieve something she'd only dreamed of. "I'm so proud of you, baby. So proud." But the absence of my parents, my siblings, hung over everything like a dark cloud. Mrs. Chen noticed immediately. "Where's the rest of your family?" she asked. I showed her the text message. The look of disgust that crossed her face was immediate and fierce. "Sophia, I need you to listen to me very carefully," she said. "What your mother wrote to you is not about you. It's about her own fear and regret, but that doesn't make it less harmful, and it doesn't make it true." Aunt Sarah was reading over Mrs. Chen's shoulder. Her face was turning red with anger. "I cannot believe Linda would do this to you today of all days." My grandmother, who'd been quiet, suddenly spoke up with more fire than I'd heard from her in years. "Rose, we're going to celebrate this girl properly, and then we're going to go have a conversation with her parents." The celebration was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. We went to a nice restaurant, something my family never would have done. Mrs. Chen told stories about my high school years, about the first time she realized I had the potential for engineering. Aunt Sarah talked about how proud she was to watch me grow into the strong woman I'd become. But I kept thinking about Tyler, about what message my parents' absence was sending him, about the dreams he might be burying right now because he'd seen what happened when someone in our family dared to want more. After dinner, we drove to my parents' house. I wasn't sure I was ready for this confrontation, but my grandmother was determined. 40 years I've watched this family discourage dreams," she said as we walked up the front steps. 40 years of watching bright children get told they're not good enough, smart enough, worthy enough. It ends today. My mother answered the door. Her expression shifted from surprise to defiance when she saw me in my cap and gown, flanked by my small but mighty support system. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "We're here to talk," my grandmother said firmly. "All of us, right now." The next 20 minutes were the most intense of my life. My father sat silent while my mother launched into a tirade about how I'd abandoned the family, how I thought I was too good for them, how college had filled my head with ideas that would only lead to disappointment. "You want to know what your fancy degree is really worth?" she said. "Nothing. You'll see. The real world doesn't care about your grades or your awards. You'll come crawling back here when reality hits." That's when something broke open inside me. 4 years of suppressed hurt, frustration, and disappointment came pouring out. "You know what, Mom? You're right about one thing. I have changed. College didn't just give me an education. It showed me what it looks like when people believe in each other's potential, instead of tearing each other down." I looked around the room at my siblings, at my father, at the family that had shaped me but couldn't contain me. I'm not better than any of you. But I refuse to be less than what I'm capable of being just to make you comfortable, and I won't apologize for that anymore. My mother's response was swift and cutting. "Then you've made your choice. Don't expect us to be here when your dreams fall apart." But then something unexpected happened. Tyler, who'd been silent in the corner, suddenly stood up. "Mom, stop," he said, his voice shaking but determined. "Just stop. Can't you see what you're doing? Sophia did something amazing, and instead of being proud, you're punishing her for it." The room went completely silent. Tyler looked at me with tears in his eyes. "I want to go to college too," he said. "And if that makes me a disappointment to this family, then maybe this family needs to change." That was the moment everything shifted. The moment I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. The confrontation with my family ended with my mother ordering all of us out of the house. Tyler tried to follow us, but my father grabbed his arm and told him he'd better think carefully about what he was choosing. I'll never forget the look in Tyler's eyes as we left. Fear mixed with determination, hope battling against family pressure. I knew that look because I'd worn it for 4 years. The next few months were the hardest of my life. I started my first engineering job at a renewable energy company, making more money than I'd ever imagined possible. But the joy of professional success was tempered by the pain of family rejection. Marcus lost his construction job 2 weeks after graduation. Instead of reaching out for help, he blamed me for abandoning the family when they needed financial support. Jasmine struggled with childcare and bills, but every time Aunt Sarah suggested I might be able to help, the response was always the same. "We don't need charity from someone who thinks she's better than us." My parents doubled down on their position. They told relatives and neighbors that I'd gotten too big for my britches and would probably fail within a year. They seemed to be waiting for me to come home defeated, ready to admit they'd been right all along. The hardest part was Tyler. He'd started his senior year of high school with dreams of college, but the pressure at home was intense. My parents, still angry about graduation day, made it clear that any talk of higher education was a betrayal of family values. Tyler and I stayed in touch through secret text messages. He was getting good grades, but the constant negativity at home was wearing him down. I could see him starting to doubt himself, starting to believe that maybe college really wasn't for people like us. 6 months after graduation, I made a decision that changed everything. I couldn't save my relationship with my parents, but I could make sure Tyler had choices. I started a college fund for him. Every month, I put aside money from my salary. I researched scholarships, talked to admissions counselors, built a comprehensive plan for his future education if he chose to pursue it. But more importantly, I stayed consistent in my own life. I worked hard, earned promotions, proved wrong every prediction my family had made about my inevitable failure. Not to spite them, but to show Tyler that success was possible. 1 year after graduation, everything came to a head again. Tyler was preparing for his senior year, and college application deadlines were approaching. He called me, crying, saying he didn't know what to do. "They're not going to forgive me if I apply to college," he said. "But I can't stop thinking about what you said, about not living my life trying not to upset other people." That's when I made him an offer that would define both our futures. "Tyler, I'm going to pay for your college education, not as charity, but as an investment in family members who believe in each other's potential. You focus on your grades and your applications. Let me handle the rest." The silence on the phone lasted so long I thought we'd been disconnected. "Are you serious?" he finally whispered. "Dead serious. But Tyler, you have to want this for yourself, not because I'm offering to pay for it. This has to be your choice." 2 weeks later, Tyler submitted applications to 5 universities. When my parents found out, the explosion was nuclear. They accused me of bribing him, of destroying the family, of turning their son against them. But this time, something was different. Tyler stood his ground. "This is my choice," he told them. "Sophia is giving me an opportunity, not forcing me to take it. But I want this education. I want to see what I'm capable of." My mother's response was heartbreaking, but not surprising. She gave Tyler the same ultimatum she'd essentially given me: choose college or choose family. Tyler looked her in the eye and said something that still gives me chills. "Mom, why does it have to be a choice? Why can't family be the people who support each other's dreams instead of destroying them?" She had no answer for that. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and personal growth? The comments section is a safe space to share your story. Today, 2 years after that devastating graduation day, I want to tell you how this story ends. Because it does end well, even though the path wasn't what I expected. Tyler graduated high school with a 4.2 GPA and got accepted to 3 universities with partial scholarships. He chose to study computer science, and he's thriving. More importantly, he's confident in ways I never was at his age. He knows his worth doesn't depend on other people's approval. My parents didn't come to his graduation either. But this time, we were ready. Aunt Sarah organized a celebration that included my grandmother, Mrs. Chen, several of Tyler's teachers, and me. We filled those empty seats with people who understood that education is a gift, not a threat. The most surprising development came 8 months ago. Marcus reached out to me for the first time since graduation. He'd been struggling with unemployment and depression, and he'd finally hit a point where he was ready to admit he might need help. "I was wrong about college," he told me during our first real conversation in years. "I was scared that you succeeding meant I was failing. But watching Tyler do well made me realize that someone else's success doesn't take anything away from me." Marcus started taking night classes at the community college. He's studying business management, hoping to eventually start his own contracting company. It's not the path he originally planned, but it's the path that makes sense for his life. Now, Jasmine is still figuring things out. She's not ready to admit she was wrong, but she's not actively hostile anymore either. She asks about Tyler's college experience sometimes, and I can see her wondering what opportunities might be possible for her daughter when she grows up. My parents remain unchanged. They've created a narrative where I'm the villain who destroyed family unity by pursuing education. They refuse to acknowledge Tyler's success or Marcus's new direction. It's painful, but I've learned that you can't make people proud of you if they're determined not to be. But here's what I've learned in these 2 years. Family isn't just about blood relations. It's about the people who see your potential and help you reach it. It's about the people who celebrate your victories and support you through your struggles. Mrs. Chen still sends me articles about engineering innovations. My grandmother, now 85, brags about her college graduate granddaughter to anyone who will listen. Aunt Sarah has become like a second mother to both Tyler and me. And at work, I've found mentors who remind me every day that my success isn't accidental or undeserved. I'm good at what I do because I worked hard to get here and continue working hard to improve. Last month, I got promoted to senior engineer. Tyler sent me a text that said, "You didn't just prove Mom wrong. You proved that dreams are worth fighting for." That message is saved on my phone, and I read it whenever I need a reminder of why I chose this path. If you're watching this and you're struggling with family members who don't support your dreams, I want you to know something important. Their fear doesn't define your potential. Their limitations don't have to become your limitations. Sometimes being the first in your family to achieve something means being misunderstood. It means facing criticism from people who love you but can't see beyond their own experiences. It means choosing growth over comfort, possibility over security. But it also means something else. It means you're not just changing your own life. You're showing the next generation that different choices are possible. Tyler often tells me that watching me graduate gave him permission to dream bigger than he'd ever imagined. That's the real victory. Not just my degree or my career success, but the ripple effect of refusing to accept limitations that were never really mine to begin with. To everyone watching who's facing similar struggles, you are not selfish for wanting more. You are not betraying your family by using your talents. You are not obligated to stay small to make other people comfortable. Your dreams matter. Your potential matters. You matter. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories about breaking generational patterns and choosing growth over comfort. And, in the comments, tell me about a time when you had to choose between others' expectations and your own dreams. What choice did you make? How did it change your life? Your story could be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Remember, you don't need anyone's permission to become who you're meant to be.